Hey guys, Enigmatic Mr. L here. I want to do a tier list for the mainline Mario games. Ranking the mainline Mario games, or Super Mario games, the mainline Super Mario games, whichever you prefer, is a difficult task, partially just because there's not exact consensus on what constitutes the mainline series. There's about like 19 or so games most people agree are part of the mainline series. Even then, there's some mild disagreement. And then you get into like a handful of games where the consensus is roughly split. I'll be trying to do my best going over some more niche picks, which I would understand some people wouldn't count as mainline, while also mentioning games while many people consider mainline, I personally don't. Beyond that, it's also just difficult because you look at two games, one that came out very early, one that came out more recently. The earlier game might be more innovative for its time, more revolutionary, did more to push like gaming forward, or at least like the Mario series forward. But it's also has a lot of like jank and clunk to it, being an older game. Whereas more recent game, it might be more polished, but it's also not particularly innovative. So comparing them side by side, the more recent one would be better, but looking at them for the time they were released, the older one would be better. I'll be trying to look at both to some extent. So, also just generally my personal preference on the Mario series. Like, if Fire Emblem, I would honestly put everything in S and A tier. If I was trying to stratify a bit. Mario, I'd probably put everything in like A or B tier. Honestly, I like the Mario games. They don't reach the highs of, say, Fire Emblem for me, but there's not really any bad ones. But I'm going to be trying to stretch them out a bit. So just know S tier probably not as good as some of the like. I don't personally enjoy them, maybe such as like Fire Emblem games. And also D tier. They're not bad games per se. They're just kind of bad by Mario standards. All right, so with that out of the way, let's just get on with the list. Starting with the original Super Mario Brothers. The original Super Mario Brothers is a classic, just completely revolutionized. Not just Mario, who had been like appeared in Donkey Kong, the Mario Brothers. This was finally set the standard, like platform adventure, power-ups, like the Fire Flower, the Mushroom, the Star, say Princess Peach, etc. It also just completely revolutionized video games. And I think it's still fun to go back to, even to this day. Just quickly playing through the levels, sometimes playing them straight out, sometimes using the warp blocks. It does have its problems, like lack of a save feature. I think the game's a little like too short, but I still think for what it did then and for how well it still holds up today, I don't think I can personally give it anything less than A tier. All right, next we have the Lost Levels, which is kind of the opposite of Super Mario Brothers in a lot of ways, which was innovative first time, still fun to play today. Lost Levels is really neither of those. It basically just plays like an expansion of Super Mario Brothers levels or worlds like 9 through 16, hence the American localization name, or Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2 if you prefer that. And it's just not particularly fun to play. Like, I think someone said it best. It basically just feels like a ROM hack of the original Super Mario Brothers. And if you play some of those like Kaizo games online, while it's not nearly as brutal as those, like the level design just feels a bit too unfair at times. And it's just so similar to the original. Like, and I think many people kind of agree, originally Leaving in Japan probably was the best choice. It's not like it's terrible, like unplayable or anything. There is a certain charm to it. But other than just saying, like, hey, it's a tough ROM hack of Super Mario Brothers 1, there's not really much reason to play it beyond completionist sake. I do appreciate the fact it helped differentiate Mario and Luigi. Like, this is the game Luigi's notorious jumps higher but has worse traction that stuck with him for many games. But outside of that, not much real reason to go back to, and didn't really push the series forward much when it was released back then. Next, we have Super Mario 2 USA, or American Super Mario Bros. 2. I think it's a fun game overall. I think someone would be perfectly justified in saying they don't consider this a mainline Mario game because, as we all know, originally it wasn't. It was just Doki Doki Panic. They reskinned it with Mario characters. But still a platformer, Super Mario in it, published by Nintendo, developed by Nintendo, I believe. The game's pretty fun. I do like having 4 different characters, each with their own play styles. You got Mario, the straightforward one. Peach is the weakest, but has the unique ability. Luigi has that jumps high and falls slowly thing, and then Toad is just he's super fast, super strong, but like jumps like a rock and just doesn't jump. Pick characters for your play styles, and then just going through it instead of jumping on enemies to defeat them, picking up and throwing them. Well, I do prefer the more traditional Mario games. For what it is, I think this is a fun game. Next, we have Super Mario Bros. 3, another classic game, not as classic or as revolutionary as the original Super Mario Bros., but it did do a lot to push the series forward. It gave us a world map instead of just going automatically from level to level, a inventory for like all your power-ups, which, speaking of, there are a lot of cool new ones here. The Hammer Bros suit, which doesn't really, I think, appear that often anymore. The Tanuki Leaf, the Funny Frog suit. Yeah, and there's also just the fact that this introduced Bowser's children. Well, back then there was children, though they got retconned later. The Koopalings and airship levels. Plus, I think the level design is really tight. It's really fun to play through. I don't think it's as iconic, naturally, as the original Super Mario Brothers, but I think A tier is fine. Super Mario Land was a launch title for the Game Boy, so many people working on it, they didn't know what they were doing, like how to handle the limited software. And I think it kind of shows in this game. It's just very short. You can complete it in one sitting, and there's really not much to say good or bad. You just kind of play it, left scratching your head, and like, that's it. Like, not terrible, not like kind of inoffensive, just kind of weird to play it. And it's like, that was strange. I think it's better than Lost Levels, because at least, this does offer a strange new experience, new kingdom, Sarasalam, introduce Princess Daisy to become a mainstay in like the spin-offs. This is one of those games I think some people don't consider part of the mainline series because it's so drastic and different from other Mario games. It kind of paved the way for the Wario Land series, which I think is understandable to an extent, but it's still a platformer, Super Mario Bros. Title. Nintendo's official website, Japanese and American, both refer to it as a mainline entry, so I'm going to do the same there. Next, we have Super Mario World. Well, here's the thing. I like Super Mario World. I just don't think it's as good as the previous main, like, the big platformers. Like Super Mario Bros., Super Mario 3, obviously Super Mario 2 is completely different, but okay, Super Mario World, it's a fun game. The level design is tight. The graphics are improvement, showing off what the SNES is capable of. Yoshi is a fun addition. I like having an interconnected world map where instead of just like warping from one world to another, like Super Mario Bros. 3, it's all connected. All good stuff. It's a solid, fun game. The reason why I don't like it quite as much as these two is just, it's hard to say. Well, one, I don't think it did it as much to push the series forward. Like Super Mario Bros. 3, I think pushed the series forward more on, even on inferior hardware. Like Super Mario World, it's like, okay, went from having a world map, big addition to the world map's connected. Okay, slight addition, changing from having like this big inventory of items to you only have one at a time, but you can use it in a level, which is kind of like a side grade in a way. Even just beyond that, this was the game that introduced boo houses, which I don't think are that fun. They just feel more maze-like. They don't feel as much like a platformer. And just there's certain levels you're required to find the secret exit instead of just like unlocking additional levels. If you find the main exit, you don't actually progress further. Kind of a bit frustrating in my opinion. It's still a fun game, just the boo houses not being fun, lack of sometimes being forced to find secret exits, and I just don't think it's as innovative as these two. I think top of B tier is probably fine. Alright, next we have Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins. I think is a big improvement over the original Super Mario Land. Team knew what they were doing more, and it shows just more creativity here, all just like the different types of worlds you come across. Like one, there's like a giant mechanical Mario, and just the levels itself, all of like the weird, bizarre enemies. Gave us, fan favorite Wario, who would go on to do his own series of both platformers and micro games. I think this game just overall, like Super Mario Land is a rough draft, Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins is the final draft. It's still not like the greatest. It's still kind of held back by the limited hardware it was on. But I think it's fun. Can honestly see maybe above Super Mario Brothers 2 USA, but there is one thing I don't like about this game. It's that you can save your progress, but if you once you collect all 6 golden coins, make it into Mario's castle, take it back. If you game over, then you lose all the 6 golden coins. Have to go and like fight all the bosses again. I know that's more of like a skill issue thing, and also today's day and age, many people are going to be playing this on emulator, whether Nintendo Switch Online or other sources, so you can just kind of save state. But it was a small gripe I have, not big, but maybe enough to put it just below Super Mario 2 USA. These are pretty close, though. Next, I have Super Mario 64. Kind of torn between S or maybe like top of A tier, at least like for now. I think I'm going to give it S tier. So, Super Mario 64, it does have a lot of things which I would understand if someone, it's not their cup of tea, especially if you didn't like grow up with this game, like went back to the present day. It's the only game, maybe that's on the entire list, I would say is downright ugly. Like, the limited, like, 2D graphics and sprites of previous games, like, yeah, they're simplistic, but they're not, like, ugly. In later games, it's like they're not up to the high polish of, like, Sony consoles or Microsoft consoles, but they're fine enough. Yeah, Super Mario 64 is ugly. The controls, while they're fine for the most part, there are times, like, if you try to go directly behind you instead of just going in a straight line, Mario just kind of, like, turns, and that can, like, mess you up if you're on, like, a narrow path or something. So the camera just downright horrendous at times. And I think the game is pretty front-loaded with, like, its best levels. But for all the bad things about Super Mario 64, it just has a certain charm to it. Very popular in the modding community. I'm not going to factor that too much into this ranking, but worth noting. Extremely popular in the speedrunning community, whether it's 120 star runs, 70 were the most common, I think, like 16 star speedruns. Fun to watch, fun to play, that sort of thing. When I was a kid, I just loved using it as just like a massive sandbox. Just kind of like go like bomb on battlefield, just kind of play around, goof around. Like that one-up mushroom you get from like stand on top of a tree, I would like spawn it and just run away from it, and it would chase me around the course, see how long I could dodge it, sometimes get stuck. A lot of fun memories. And just, it's extremely innovative for its time. This is like defined 3D like platform adventure games, like collectathons, that sort of thing. So I think S tier is fine. I would certainly understand if someone like placed it lower, but it does hold like a special place in my heart. Speaking of holding a special place in my heart, Super Mario Sunshine is going straight to the top for me. Now, I very much understand why people would like place this game lower, and just like Super Mario 64, it does have a lot of big flaws. It went from having like 15 main worlds to like 7. That's a big one. In its place, we got blue coins, which could be a bit of a nuisance to keep track of. Just beyond that, there's a lot of jank. Like everyone knows the notorious missions, like the lily pad level, the pachinko machine, the watermelon level, like etc. But for me personally, I think many of the movies, games, TV shows, etc., the ones that have like a high amount of good content and a high amount of bad content, those end up being like some of my favorite a lot, because I enjoy what this game did right. And even some like the bad stuff, it's fun to discuss about. It's fun in its own way. Like Super Mario Sunshine, I just really like it a lot. I love the beach theme, like aesthetics, how a lot of levels like tie into that. I like when you go into each of the little worlds, they have their own little narrative that you get by progressing each Shine Sprite. Like that one beach level, it introduces like the legendary Sandbird egg, just as a little side thing. The first mission. The second mission, it's under attack. You like defeat Wiggler. The third mission, Wiggler's angry, fight them. The fourth mission, the Sandbird hatches. And then there's another like beach hotel level. It's like, oh, the hotel's ruined. And then you fight the monsters. Oh, the hotel's bad. Go to the next mission, but it's filled with ghosts. You go through a secret world, like the secret area, and it looks like you cleared up all the ghosts. And the third mission, oh, there might still be a few ghosts here lingering about. And then you eventually fight like Big Boo in the casino. Just stuff like that. The progression of each world, the sunshine, or like the beach aesthetic. I just really like this game a lot. It's my personal favorite of the mainline Mario platformers. If I was being a bit more quote unquote objective, see maybe like A, maybe like B tier, but personally, this is my favorite Mario platformer. Next, we have Super Mario 64 DS, which it comes close to being like somewhere in A tier. Would have been the perfect like port of Super Mario 64, which, by the way, in general, I'm not counting like ports and remakes as distinct entries, but I think Super Mario 64 is like different enough that I would give it its own slot, while also maintaining that I'm not really counting like the advanced games or like 3D Mario All Stars, that sort of thing. But Super Mario 64 DS, it adds like 30 new stars to collect, completely new worlds, at least one new mission for each of the worlds in Super Mario 64, new characters in Luigi, Wario, and Yoshi. It gave us all these mini games that really showed off the DS features, and having like dual maps to help keep track of things. Changes like just a little bit in each of the levels. Like some missions are unique to Super Mario 64, like just a few. But in general, like Super Mario 64 DS, it'll do something like I think a wall you're supposed to go through in like Tall Tall Mountain. I think in Super Mario 64 DS it has like coins pointing to it because it was a little cryptic in the original. Great game. Would be somewhere in A tier, probably not S tier because it's not going to be as innovative as Super Mario 64 for its time, but it has a few things holding it back. The camera is still pretty bad, and while it was forgivable in the first 3D Mario game, it's a bit less forgivable like 8 years later. The characters just don't feel balanced. Like, you start out as Yoshi, and then when you unlock Mario, beyond specific missions where you're required to use either one of those characters, I think there's reason to choose one or the other. Like, just personal playstyle. Like, Mario's faster and can wall jump. That's nice, but Yoshi has, like, the tongue ability, can swap enemies and throw eggs. So, take your pick there. But then Luigi and Wario just throw balance out the window. Like, Luigi's backflip just solves, like, 90% of the game's obstacles. Just completely breaks and trivializes the game. And then Wario has, like, the opposite problem. Where, aside from missions we're required to use them for their special abilities, like Wario's breaking the black brick blocks or Metal Wario, there's almost no reason to ever use Wario. Just the lack of agility and like speed really hurts. There's like a very small handful of missions where its extra strength is actually impactful, like the bully mission and Lethal Lava Land or like Chief Chili, but that's about it. And of course, the biggest problem with Super Mario 64 DS is the controls. Like, using the D-pad, it's not terrible, but the game was clearly designed to show off like a new analog stick, and not having that, just having inferior controls really hurts. I think like the biggest factor preventing it from reaching somewhere in like A tier. If this game had like come out like the 3DS with like the circle pad, I think it'd be much better. There's also been like more time between Super Mario 64 and its remake. But yeah, for what it is, it's a solid port, but I don't think it completely like supplants the original Super Mario 64 like as the definitive version. I think both games are worth experiencing. This for like its controls, that sort of thing, and this, for the extra missions and extra content and all of that. Next, we have New Super Mario Brothers. New Super Mario Bros. Series these days has a reputation for being anything but new, just like stale and repetitive. I think even when the original New Super Mario Bros. Came out in like 2006, it didn't really do that much to push the series forward, like despite the namesake. We just kind of gave it a pass back then because, hey, it's the first 2D mainline Mario game in like over 10 years. And also it's the first like mainline Mario game on a handheld besides like remakes and over 10 years, something like that. So we just kind of gave it a pass. I'm not really a big fan of any of the power-ups here. The mini mushroom feels more like a side grade. You die in one hit. Yeah, you have more floaty jumps, but it's mostly just used for unlocking like star coins and like secret required paths. Mega Mushroom is cool. They show it off the first level, but it barely ever shows up in the game just because you can't really design levels around it. You just destroy everything. And Blue Shell is kind of fun, but you just kind of end up losing control of it. You generally prefer a more consistent power-up like the Fire Flower. The game's pretty short and easy. Of the 8 worlds, you end up skipping 2 of them by default. And yeah, that does pose a unique challenge. You have to go back and fight them as Mini Mario and to unlock them, but just in your first playthrough, you end up like breezing through everything. I do like the boss fights. Actually has unique boss fights, best in the New Super Mario Brothers series. fun to play. I think like star coins, there's a good enough incentive to go like collect them for completion's sake. They don't feel too difficult to get. But still generally rewarding to collect them, or as many as you can. Overall, solid game, just not very innovative. All right, next we have Super Mario Galaxy, and pretty much all of these, like the first three mainline Mario 3D games, I think they're all great in their own right. They all do something. Like Super Mario 64 is the most innovative. Super Mario Sunshine is my personal favorite, and Super Mario Galaxy, I think comparing them like side by side, it's the best, most polished, most fun overall. It doesn't have as many unique worlds as like, or I should say, it doesn't have as many unique missions like per world, but more than makes up for that, just the sheer variety of worlds. Even if you don't like a particular galaxy, you're not going to be spending more than like roughly, I don't know, 3 or so power stars on it. You have a lot of choices on which ones to collect, which ones to ignore. Something that admittedly was a bit of a problem with Sunshine because they were like mandatory shine sprites. But even just going for like 120 stars, I don't think there's really any outright bad galaxies. Just some are like better than others. Makes good use of the Wii's controls, just pointing to collect all the star bits. Spin could have been mapped to a button, which they did in like 3D All Stars, but oh well. Princess Rosalina's like storybook mode was like a fun side sort of to help change up just the usual like Bowser Kids at Peach, but without making it too reliant just on like narratives. You can still focus on like the gameplay itself. It's just kind of this side activity. It was nice and touching. In general, just all the galaxies, just going from planet to planet, so much creativity, good level design. Pretty much has what you'd want from a mainline Mario game. Then we have New Super Mario Brothers Wii. Probably my personal favorite of the New Super Mario Brothers games. In some ways, it isn't inferior, I think, to the original. Big part of that is replace the original bosses with Koopalings. And back then, the Koopalings had been absent for a while in mainline Mario games, so it was nice to see them again, but now they're just kind of everywhere. People are kind of tired of them. But back then, it was nice to see them again. Beyond that, like New Super Mario Brothers, while it wasn't innovative, you just kind of got a pass. It was okay, it's the first 2D Mario game in a while, first one on handheld. New Super Mario Bros. Wii doesn't have that to fall back on, but it gave us a co-op play, which is fun, it's chaotic. I think the difficulty is a bit more here in Wii as opposed to DS. You at least have to like travel through all 8 worlds, besides using like shortcuts, cannons, unlike the original New Super Mario Brothers. The power-ups, I think, are better. Penguin combined. It's like the frog suit, but it still has use on land. So I like that. Propeller suit is fun. And, just a bit more challenging, chaotic multiplayer. I can see it either way, but I think New Super Mario Bros. Wii just barely edges it out. Super Mario Galaxy 2, it's a game that's really difficult to talk about without comparing it to the original. In general, I just think the level design of Galaxy 1, it's really great. Galaxy 2 just takes things up a notch, just so much variety. The game just constantly throws new ideas and mechanics that you end up like using them in one level or one galaxy, or you're not using them again. Just move on to something new, like flying on a bird or using the drill, or the power-ups here are good as well. While it doesn't have Ursulina's like storybook element, and even more disappointing than that, I think the game is kind of in a way just like not in canon, because it basically is like, okay, the Star Festival's here once every year. So it basically is like this game in another universe. But I do like just how streamlined it is, just instantly, like, it's not as tedious to navigate as the observatory, just going like straight from level to level. Bit more challenging here than the original, and a better post game. I just played through the whole game as Luigi again, collecting the green stars and like hidden areas. That was fun. Overall, just fantastic level design. So much variety and innovation. Not as impactful as Galaxy 1, but I still personally prefer it more than the original. All right, next we have Super Mario 3D Land. I think as a launch title for the 3DS, it's fine. It does do a good job showing off how 3D can affect platforming. Um, there are certain sections I think the game like notifies you. It's like, hey, turn your 3D on, it'll make it easier to like time to land your jumps, that sort of thing. We don't really need to. You can just turn it off. Kind of like a 2D Mario game, but with a bit more depth to it, like literal depth. Just still like interesting enough in a way. Worlds don't have their own theme, so you can end up just going from one level to the next and something completely new. But as a result, I think worlds just feel less distinct from one another. It ends up being like a game. It's fine, but I don't think it's one of the most memorable games. So I think like bottom of B tier is probably fine for it. New Super Mario Bros. 2 is going straight to the bottom. It's not like it's terrible, unplayable, but you just play through it. It's just so like dull and repetitive. New Super Mario Bros. And New Super Mario Bros. Wii weren't really pushing much to begin with. And New Super Mario Bros. 2 being the third one, it doesn't really, I think, innovate as much as we did with like its better power ups, bringing back the Koopa lanes, more difficult. New Super Mario Bros. 2, it's very easy. It just has the Koopa lanes, like, again, doesn't bring them back like we have its own unique bosses, like New Super Mario Bros. DS. Coin collecting just felt like more of a gimmick than anything. Like, yeah, I ended up collecting 1,000,000 coins, getting the, hey, you get a new title screen, but it's just more tedious than anything. Just very bland and forgettable. Not much new music. At least the Lost levels had an excuse. It was only like their second mainline platformer. New Super Mario Bros. 2, they've been doing this for like over 15 years at this point. And even like Lost levels, I think push the series more forward because, like I said, it did differentiate Mario and Luigi. Like giving Luigi increased jump height but worse traction. That's at least something. New Super Mario Bros. 2, just completely forgettable. A little bit better is New Super Mario Bros. U. I think this game would be a little bit, not much, but a little bit more appreciated. New Super Mario Bros. 2 just never was. It wasn't released at all. Side by side, comparing them all, like ignoring innovation, like when they came out, it might be the best New Super Mario Bros. Game. Maybe. It's kind of tough to say. It's in HD. Some of the levels are really great. Everyone knows that like famous like Van Gogh level looks amazing. Got the baby Yoshis as basically just functional power-ups and has all those like challenge mode things. You can spend like hours of time doing them, which are really tricky, but really rewarding. Overall, again, not very innovative. Especially with time it's released, I don't think you can give it higher than C tier, but I think like top of C tier is fine. Super Mario 3D World just feels like a better Super Mario 3D Land. Like, yeah, neither of these games are really particularly like innovative, but Super Mario 3D Land, just the level design is, yeah, it's fun, it's good. What Super Mario 3D World lacks in creativity and originality, it more than makes up for like execution and sheer level of fun. Like this kind of feels like a Super Mario 3D Land walk, so Super Mario 3D World can run sort of deal. Like this is what I expect from it. The bosses, they're all unique. You got some fun chaotic ones there, fun multiplayer, chaotic now in 3D. I like, again, having just 4 selectable characters, each with their own different preferences. Well, 5, the secret character, but Luigi's jump high, Toad's speed, Mario's all around, Peach's float. It's all here. Collecting all the green stars and stamps. It feels rewarding with like, I don't recall ever having to look up. Maybe like 1 or 2 times there was like a super obtuse green star stamp, but generally it's challenging to collect them all, but rewarding and not overly obtuse, obscure. Really fun game. So the astute of you might have noticed is the one time I'm including like a port/remake in Super Mario Maker 3DS. And that's because I was not one of the 100 people total to buy a Wii U, I mean. So I'm just kind of judging these games based on their like Switch counterparts. For a 3D World, I'm taking the Switch version, but I'm not factoring in Bowser's Fury. And for New Super Mario Bros. U, I just played New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, but I'm not taking into account New Super Luigi U or Bowser's Fury. Both of those games feel just kind of like bundles, add-ons, even though technically New Super Mario Luigi U could be by its own game. It feels incomplete without the main game. And there's also just the fact neither of them have Super Mario as part of the title. But I don't think something having Super Mario as part of the title automatically makes it mainline. Otherwise, you get games like Super Mario Brothers Super Mario Brothers like Teacher, I Am the Sweaters, Super Mario Brothers Sweater, I'm a Teacher, or something like that. You have these obscure ones. I do think not having Super Mario in the title does exclude it from being part of the mainline's games. So, Super Mario Maker 3DS, I do understand many people wouldn't consider the Maker games mainline, but Nintendo has officially referred them as mainline. They are platformers in a sense, so I think they're good to count as in these lists. That said, Super Mario Maker 3DS, it's better than Lost Levels if for no other reason, just the sample courses that come with it, the 100 Mario Man Challenge. That feels more fun or going to play out than Lost Levels, especially when you take into account that they have these challenges, optional challenges like collect the game collecting this many coins, or collect this game without defeating enemies, or something like that. Just playing through the 100 Mario Challenge can be done in like a couple of hours or something like that. But doing all those challenges takes more time, and it really spent more time with the game completing it. It was felt rewarding. Of course, all that said, I think the biggest problem people like harp on this game is that you couldn't upload levels online. You can only like play certain select ones. And while that's true now for the Wii one as well, like 3DS and Wii U functionalities disappeared. This game never even had that to begin with. Especially now, you can't play online levels, so you're just kind of left with making your own courses and the sample levels, or if you have someone else to play their levels. But I think this game's worth picking up. Like if you see it in a bargain bin or something, you can get it for like relatively cheap for no other reason, just the 100 Mario Challenge and like the extra side challenges that come with it. It's fun, not that great, hence why it's like low. It's why it's in D tier, but slightly I think underrated. Super Mario Run, another game I think many people would consider not mainline. It is like a mobile game, not a Nintendo console, but it's kind of like a platform. You could argue it's more like an endless runner thing, but Nintendo has referred to it as a mainline entry. Super Mario in the title, platforming elements, developed by Nintendo. I think it does a lot of good things. The gameplay is simple, just an auto runner, but you end up like tapping to jump, but it has its own sort of like charm to it. I think the big thing which keeps it in C tier as opposed to D tier for me is that I do like how this game was like price modeled. You get one world for free. You just spend $10 to unlock like six worlds and like all the additional features. It's not like something like most mobile games which are constantly shaking you down for like small payments. It's just $10 up front, and that's it. You have the full game ahead in your hands. I really wish something like Fire Emblem Heroes had taken this approach, rather than just this mobile game that's never ending, constantly shaking you down for money. People end up spending like over $1,000 a year on it. Just, something like a small money, like here now, and then you get a complete package. I really wish, this caught on more, but sadly it didn't. And that said, the game still has its flaws. It's simplistic, and, it has the questionable design choices many Nintendo games have. Just, you have to be connected to the internet to play it. So, there's that. I think like bottom C tier is fine. All right, next we have Super Mario Odyssey. I'm going to give it S tier, but maybe like low S tier. So Super Mario Odyssey has a lot of great things going for it. It looks great, controls great. Still kind of questionable design. There's like motion controls that are optional, but they have like increased benefit. Like when you're climbing, if you shake the controls, you climb faster, that sort of thing. But it's not that big of a deal. Bursting with creativity. Even when there's these new worlds like Metropolis, New Donk City, kind of with more realistic humans as opposed to Mario. There's like the Food Kingdom. Even when you go to more like done worlds, like themes before, like Water World, they have like these talking mermaids there. You go to like a desert world, it's got like the Mexican like Day of the Dead like skeletons there. Bowser's Kingdom has more like Japanese feel to it. Really nice. Collecting all these different outfits that just like cosmetic. A lot of them are like throwbacks to very obscure Mario games. Really fun. All the sorts of different boss fights that still just kind of die in 3 hits, have that problem, but that's just kind of a problem for like Mario games in general. Really fun. The reason why I don't think it's like quite as high of an S tier, maybe even I think like borderline A tier. Big reason just like difficulty or lack thereof. If you're just playing it to beat the main story, you can easily do it in just like a few hours. And then like once you beat the game, a lot of new like moons appear in previous worlds, and some of them I do get, like a few of them, but I think for the most part, it would have been more enjoyable just to have more of the moons available from the start and increase the number of moons you need to progress to the next world. The difficulty in this game, it doesn't really come much from like intense platforming, although there are a few challenges. It comes from like overly obscure, like obtuse stars, like ProCD made a video on it, where it's like you just have to stare at that flying ship and it gives you a moon. Like, I ended up collecting most of the moons in this game, made it to like the dark side of the moon and like the darker side of the moon. Completed that like boss gauntlet, or what it was, it's been a few years now. But I've never gone back and 100%ed it. It's just kind of this awkward feeling where I don't feel like doing all those obscure moons where I basically have to like look up something, but I don't feel like starting a new playthrough either. Really fun for your first playthrough. Wish they would have just kind of made the main story longer by having more moons available from the start in each world. But yeah, really fun. Just barely misses out, or just doesn't get higher than like bottom of S tier just because like the difficulty or lack thereof. So Super Mario Maker 2, unlike Wii U and 3DS, this game is still like around with online functionality. You can play online levels, but even still, it's like I'm just not a big fan of it. It's more like a personal thing. Like you could argue it's like the best Mario game ever made because it has like infinite levels and like infinite or nearly infinite potential. But it's just like, yeah, but when over like 90% of that is just garbage from like kids making levels or people making like Kaizo levels to make the lost levels look easy. It's like if I want a really tough Mario game, I'll just play the lost levels. Better than lost levels, if for no other reason than just the sample courses. While I don't think you end up playing them and they not all of them have like unique challenge. Even when they do, they just have like one, which is like required to beat it. You end up beating like the story mode in just like a few hours. But it was fun doing that. Just in general, I don't like the idea of just playing like fan-made levels because again, I feel like fan fictions. Like they just lack that kind of like Nintendo polish I've come to expect. And there's also just the fact that eventually, just like with Maker 1, the online functionality is going to shut down. You're just going to be left with the sample courses, and since online play won't be available. And yeah, you could argue that for like Mario Runs that's connected to the internet, eventually it'll cease to be. But we don't know what the future holds for this game yet. I mean, they could, as it gets closer, just take off the online requirement. Who knows? And even if they don't, just being a mobile game with a solid price model, I think it's like C tier is fine. Mario Maker 2, present day, I don't like just playing just garbage levels, and eventually you're just going to be left with the sample courses. Better than Mario Maker 3DS, because at least for now, there's more variety to it. But yeah, not a big fan. And last, but certainly not least, we have Super Mario Bros. Wonder, most recent mainline entry. A lot of creativity here, both in terms of like the wonder effects, just transforming into a Goomba, causing a bunch of like sheep or something to ride in. Like you have to like ride on them, completely changing your perspectives for levels. That's all well and good. Even just like the standard level design, there's so many like new enemies, like that gulping enemy that like eats coins and Goomba, or the one that eats Goombas, one that eats coins. There's that like Birdo like enemy that shoots stuff at you and runs away from you, just like name a few. The power-ups or the badge system really like spices up playthrough, adds like personality to it, adds like I guess I should say adds like player customization to it. Just misses out on S tier, partially just because I think the 3D games just offer a bit more than like 2D Mario games, but even just beyond that, I kind of wish the characters were more differentiated from each other. Like maybe Yoshi wasn't a super easy mode. He still took damage, just had his iconic like flutter jump and tongue. Maybe give Luigi his iconic higher jump and lower traction, Toad's faster, etc. Maybe they didn't do that because it would kind of mesh with the badge system. I don't know. But in beyond that, while this game did improve a lot from like the blandness of new Super Mario Brothers games, uh, the creativity was kind of lacking in the boss department. Just end up fighting Bowser Jr., which, yeah, he has a Wonder Flower, but even then, they're not that great. And some bosses don't, or some worlds don't even have bosses at all. So there's that. Still a solid game, but just barely misses out on A tier or on S tier. And that's my list. Feel free to let me know which games you think I severely overrated or underrated. As always, thank you so much for watching. This is Enigmatic Mr. L signing out.